You've heard it 1,000 times, right? The idea that Islam was spread by the sword. It paints this really vivid picture of, well, of forced conversions on a massive global scale. But how true is that picture really? Let's dig into the evidence.
So let's just ask the question head-on. Was Islam spread by the force of the sword? We're going to look at this from a few different angles, theology, history, and see what they actually tell us.
All right, to get to the truth of it, the first place we have to look is the religion's most important source, the Quran. What does it actually have to say about forcing people to convert?
Well, the answer is in a very famous, very clear verse from the Quran's 2nd chapter, and it says, La ikraha fid din.
So what does that mean? The translation is incredibly direct. There is no compulsion in religion. And this isn't just a suggestion, It's a foundational principle. It means real faith, true belief, just can't be forced. Anyone using coercion would be going directly against this core Islamic teaching.
And it's not just a one-off line either. This idea is backed up elsewhere. Another chapter states it plainly. To you, your religion, and to me, my religion. This really sets up a clear principle of peaceful coexistence, not forced conversion. The idea is to share a message, not to compel belief.
Okay, so the scripture is pretty clear on this. But what about the history? I mean, if Islam was really spread by the sword, the history books should be full of it. So let's see what they say. And this is where the historical evidence gets really, really interesting. You'd think the biggest Muslim populations would be where the early Muslim armies were most active, right? In the Arab world. But the country with the largest Muslim population today, it's not even in the Middle East.
It's Indonesia, home to over 230 million Muslims. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's the biggest single Muslim community on the entire planet. So you have to ask, what incredible military campaign made this happen? The answer? Zero. Not one. No Muslim army ever invaded Indonesia or neighboring Malaysia. Islam got there peacefully. It was carried by traders, by spiritual teachers. People were drawn to their character, their fair business dealings, and their message of equality, not to a sword.
Okay, but what about a place that was ruled by Muslim dynasties? India is the perfect test case for this. For more than 800 years, Muslim emperors were in charge. If you were ever going to force conversions, this would have been the time and place to do it. So after 8 centuries of Muslim rule, what was the result? Well, today, India's population is still overwhelmingly non-Muslim. If the plan was conversion by the sword, you'd have to say it was a massive failure. The much more logical conclusion? That was never the main goal in the first place. But there's a third piece to this whole puzzle that's absolutely crucial. Even when the early Muslims did find themselves at war, they had to follow a very strict code of ethics, a clear set of rules for how to behave in a conflict. The Prophet Muhammad laid down some incredibly specific rules. Armies were forbidden from harming non-combatants. That means women, children, and the elderly. They couldn't harm priests or monks in their monasteries. They were explicitly told not to destroy churches or temples. They weren't even allowed to destroy the environment by cutting down fruit-bearing trees or burning crops. So let's just think about this logically for a second. Would a faith that tells its soldiers to protect trees and enemy places of worship during a war also tell them to force their beliefs on civilians? The two ideas just don't mesh. They are fundamentally at odds with each other. So when we put all the evidence together, theology, history, ethics, what's the real conclusion here? Was it the sword, or was it something else entirely? There's a powerful idea that I think sums this all up perfectly. A sword can conquer land, sure. It can force people to obey. But what it can't do is conquer a heart. It can't change what a person truly believes. And faith, at its very core, is a matter of the heart.
So what the history actually shows is that Islam's spread was driven by character, not by coercion. It spread through the honesty of merchants on the world's ancient trade routes, through the compassion of its spiritual teachers, and through a core message that just resonated deeply with people, the idea of one God and the fundamental equality of all humankind.
And hey, don't just take it from me. Listen to what the respected Western historian Delancey O'Leary wrote after he studied all the evidence. He called the idea of Muslims forcing Islam by the sword, quote, one of the most fantastically absurd myths that historians have ever repeated.
The evidence is pretty overwhelming. The story of Islam's spread is far more about character than it is about conflict. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. If a fact that is this widely believed turns out to be a myth, what other parts of history might be worth a second look?